And there we go. So good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Peter Verbaas. I'm CEO for the Silverstone Technology Cluster. Welcome to another one of our webinars. As you might be aware, we are doing this as part of a whole series across the year. So we've done loads of these as well. We started them back in March 2020, so we've done quite a few. And they're all available to have a look at on our YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look through some of the previous ones that we've done, there's a whole array of interesting topics and lots to learn. So please go to YouTube and search for Silverstone Technology Cluster. You'll be able to find them all there on our channel. And obviously we still have more coming up, and also a number of different events coming up. So please do have a look at silverstonetechnologycluster.com for upcoming events, and by all means get involved in these as well. Lots of exciting stuff. Just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, obviously I'm about to hand over to Rob. Rob will run us through his presentation. I think there's going to be a bit of an interactive element in it. But if there were any questions that you wanted to ask, there is the raise hand functionality. So please just sort of raise your hand, and we can come to you. Or indeed, give us an actual little wave on the screen and turn on your camera, and then we'll come to you as well. And then obviously you can ask your questions in person and things. So what will also happen is that we'll send everybody a copy of the slides afterwards, as well as a link to the recording as well. So there is the opportunity to follow up with Rob directly, because we'll share Rob's contact details as well. So you should get all the information that you need sort of afterwards. So so just so you know that's on its way. I think that's about it from an admin point of view. So I'll now hand over to Rob. Now Rob is with the Institute for Manufacturing with Cambridge University, and we have a good relationship with them. And Rob has indeed done a number of these before, and they've always been very good. So no pressure on this one, Rob. But over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Good morning, and yeah, I think everyone's in the UK, so good morning. Welcome to this presentation, and thank you, Pim and the Silverstone Technology Cluster, for agreeing to host this event. As Pim mentioned, this is I think this is my third trip out to Silverstone Technology Cluster, where previously I talked, for some of you maybe on the call, on strategic road mapping, strategic technology planning, or technology innovation planning. So do look out for those things. This time round, it's around industrial digitalization, and I wanted to take you through some of the work that IFM has done in this topic area, and give you some ways to think about industrial digitalization and how to make some progress. So I'm what's called an industrial associate. I'm with IfM Engage, which is part of the Institute of Manufacturing at the University of Cambridge. And if you wish, you can connect with me on LinkedIn using that little QR code if you're familiar with those, or just search me out. So in terms of the session today, I just wanted to run through with you a few topics. I do have a couple of stop-off points where we can open up the mic and have a little bit of a discussion at least. And I'd like to ask you a question in a moment about where you are at with digitalization, industrial digitalization, get your perspectives on that. One of the central features of this presentation is insights from a global manufacturing study that IFM did for Innovate UK around industrial digital technologies a couple of years ago now, but I think it's got some valuable learning points for companies thinking about starting, or if you have already started, to refine your progress and strategies, perhaps. I think also is where can you start? Barriers and enablers to adoption of not only the technologies actually, but how do you start to make progress? How do you plan for digital transformation? How might you refine your plans for digital transformation? But first of all, I'd like you to, if you wish, come on open mic, and so come off mute if you would like to consider this question. Just say a little bit about what's your interest in industrial digital technologies, maybe something, what's your role, what's working, what's not, and just share that a little bit. Who would like to accept my challenge there? So is that yeah, where are you at in your journey? Have you started? Let's keep it really simple. Helen, you've raised your hand. You would like to say something there?
Just had to work out how to unmute. I'm Helen Lockett. I'm a senior lecturer in engineering at the Open University. So my interest is in product lifecycle management systems and design for manufacture. I've worked over quite a long career with aerospace companies looking at how to, I guess, get a more sort of continuous digital flow from, say, design information and using that in your manufacturability analysis, in your planning your maintainability, looking at maintenance, so sort of integration. But I'm interested, I'm an academic, I'm not an industrialist.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. Anybody else? So are there any industrialists on the call who run companies, who run digitalization, are thinking about that, who are already working through a digitalization plan?
Hi, it's Richard Dempers here from a small consultancy called Rheinbury Limited. We're doing some work in the airport space. One of the big things we're looking at is how to implement, say, predictive maintenance schemes for baggage systems. So really interested to hear your views on predictive maintenance and how you can encourage customers to take that up, because I think it's a very useful technology going forward.
Well, I can say I don't know, I'm not an expert on predictive maintenance, but I've worked in organizations where we have used predictive maintenance, but I take that from a point of view of a technology management issue, perhaps, which is how do we sell technologies and adopt technologies to give value, and the value in predictive maintenance would be higher reliability, uptime, cost down, that sort of thing. So maybe take a technology management perspective on that. Okay, anybody else? Okay, perhaps we're still warming up this morning. We'll get to a midpoint and stop off and gather your thoughts. So anything that occurs to you as we go, I'm very happy to hear from you about that. So I kind of alluded to stuff I've done before. I guess engineers and entrepreneurs have been dreaming about, let's call it factories of the future, almost forever. You're very familiar, I'm sure, with the term the fourth industrial revolution, another way of talking about industrial digital technologies. And it's a platform really for enabling this factory of the future dream to occur, to come alive, and to bring our businesses with it. And it didn't seem that long ago, but perhaps it was more than a couple of decades ago when I was working at advanced materials companies, chemical companies, on concepts of factories of the future. So definitely technologies of all sorts, but including industrial digital technologies was part of our thinking. And that was because the manufacturing assets were hamstrung by old plants, a time of significant growth in the company. And we wanted to really reconceptualize the way in which factories can be realized. And IDTs was a key player in doing that. It brought a strong desire to go continuous, as in the process industry, certainly that's a big theme. And we did have some success, I would say, but I was, I suppose, overall a bit disappointed by the extent to which we could actually access industrial digital technologies at scale. At the time, some parts of the industry were certainly using, say, advanced process control and algorithms, that sort of thing, and data collection. So you can imagine in large continuous chemical processing plants, that's absolutely vital to keep them online and safe and optimized, actually. But lots of the technologies are now becoming available and ubiquitous, has really transformed the scene. So perhaps the factory of the future would be very much a digital one, I would say. So fast forward to 2021, and this report's from a couple of years ago was around what the government's interest, UK government's interest in what does Britain need to do, the UK need to do in respect of industrial digital technologies. And the Made Smarter review, I'm sure you're at least familiar with the title, perhaps even read the report, was a desire by policymakers to solve many problems like the productivity paradox and general economic concerns, and they haven't gone away. In fact, I would say they're possibly amplified. Digitalisation initiatives around the globe, fourth industrial revolution, America's got its version, China its version, South Korea's got its version. There's a Made Smarter Commission that's really brought this to the UK, and it's now starting to use the jargon, scale out and scale up across the country. And some countries have been more perhaps advanced in this whole topic area, like South Korea. And we're starting to see a range of outcomes from those early pilots in the Northwest. There was the Made Smarter pilot for particularly aimed at SMEs, that's now rolling more widely and to larger companies. But I think, from those early sites, we can glean, what's working, what's not working, and how do you get the results based on that learning. But one thing we can say is that as a result of reviews like this one and the report that will come into a second, is companies doing almost everything in their first efforts on digitalisation. They may be undertaking these kind of skunk works that Lockheed Martin fame on digital technologies. Trying a few things, trying to see what works, make some progress, get some value. But how do we stitch that all together to make it, I would say, more strategic as a technology platform? And that's the main message, really, is to say to make real impact on digitalisation is to think strategically, focus efforts on things that make a difference to you, that make a difference to you, that are high impact, even if it's perhaps more difficult to do. So that's a kind of setting the scene. For some of you, perhaps you don't know about what IFM does. IFM, the Institute for Manufacturing at Cambridge University, has been addressing big challenges relevant to manufacturers and governments for several decades, actually. And digitalisation is just one more, if you like, big challenge that IFM is tackling. But the scope is quite broad. Okay, manufactured in the title of IFM. Sometimes we call it Big M manufacturing. But it's all the ideas and methods that bring together technology, management and policy across the chain of events and activities that IFM is looking for. I quite like this picture. It does almost speak 1,000 words, but it's on a page, as you'd expect, say just drawing your eyes to the left-hand side, IFM undertakes research. So there's lots of top academics at IFM in Cambridge undertaking research like digitalisation, automation, but also technology management, policy, business strategy, sustainability, services, servitization. And that might gravitate companies to come and who are interested in those topics to work with IFM. But that can turn into ways of repeatedly thinking about the problem. So let's call it practice. So in effect, that's sort of where I sit amongst other people. And we're bridging between the research using the tools and techniques that IFM develops, and on the right-hand side, government, industry, and other universities as well. And that's this kind of knowledge transfer practice. IfM Engage is the knowledge transfer unit of the IFM. But I think it's quite an exciting place for these kind of topics, that kind of leading edge topics and leading edge thinking sort of interest me in particular. But let's move on to some bit of content. You'll be, I'm sure, familiar with the term Industry 4.0, and it's about the integration of widespread integration of industrial computing technology in industrial manufacturing. And you've no doubt seen that pictures like this paint show a timeline, in effect, of the first to second to third to fourth industrial revolutions from the 18th, 20th, the 1970s and to today. you know, motive forces being from steam to the Internet of Things, from industrialization to autonomization, bringing the human and technologies together. But it's the first, you know, revolution that has actually been named before it has fully happened. So that's interesting, I guess. But we can also think about, you know, what's driving this change, or what's happening, what's new, what's not. There's a lot of hype. If you might be familiar with the Gartner hype curve, you know, lots of interest of all sorts of factors and varieties. Change, more change is the mantra because it's good, it's technology. But really, it then settles down as the maybe disillusion moves in. But then it settles down to a picture of really understanding where technologies can really fit in. So in terms of you know, cluster of technologies around IDT, some fancy icons at the bottom of the page, but really what's not new is the fact that, you know, there are lots of sensors, lots of data analytics as around simulation, as I described in the introduction. These things have been around in various forms and scales for decades, but it's now, you know, the things that have happened, really the plummeting cost of sensors, the ubiquity of the internet and the scale of that going, you know, up to now 5G, and people thinking about what 6G would look like. But also, you know, network effects, cloud computing, all of the things that businesses are now incorporating. But also things like, you know, the involvement of customers in the service that's delivered, or the manufactured good, is becoming much more embedded, I'd say. But also, you know, we are now totally familiar and switched on, plugged into our mobile devices and personal computing on a minute-to-minute basis now. So moving ahead into some of the aspects of the report, and it was Dr. Carlos Lopez Gomez at Policy Links that headed the review. You can see that, you know, digital technologies affect lots of user industries across those green bars there. That's really the chain of events, the supply chain from research, development, design, all the way up to after-sales services. That's the kind of manufacturing chain, if you will, big M manufacturing, but also new opportunities to create and capture new value. Lots of the word smart appears a lot, whether that be in products and processes, smart supply chains, smart design and delivery, new ways of thinking and conceiving of business all the way across. And the types of innovation, you know, product, service innovation, process innovation, supply chain innovation, and so on, you know, are ways in which we can organize our thinking around industrial digital technologies. Okay, great. So the reports conducted a couple of years ago now looked across the globe at over 1,000 individual use cases across these territories, and it identified just around 200 use cases in particular to pick apart, you know, what is really going on in these projects and where is value actually being generated. And that can be organized. So, as you know, imagine there's a lot of data that comes out. How do we then present that and make meaning of it? Well, we can look across, if you will, the manufacturing product and process design aspects. We can look around the manufacturing process, you know, what companies are doing around manufacturing infrastructure, what they're doing about their enterprise and enterprise management. We can look at the other dimension around, you know, looking at individual single processes or multiple processes. And of course, companies as part of a network, there might be multiple enterprises involved in that. And you can see product development, product design, product manufacturing, system planning, lots of projects across those topic areas. In the manufacturing processes, you'd expect, you know, process quality management, material aspects, assembly, testing, inspection, process control, and then into respective manufacturing infrastructure around the operations and the enterprise, and then in the enterprise itself, quality, management, equipment maintenance, predictive maintenance would perhaps fit in there, and also planning and control, the life cycle of the business that was also mentioned by one of the attendants there, and enabling factors, the science of technology and the business considerations, which must be part of technology. This story is so much more than only the technology. We can look at the share of cases across manufacturing processes, and I won't go into any in any real detail here, but to say, process control and optimization as a first wave of activity, was largely the largest aspect, largest area, and then things like material processing, process quality management, and so on, and then they've kind of reduced there. But then across the enterprise management, planning control was a big point, and then particularly my area of interest around innovation technology management, product design and definition, process design and definition, product development. These are volumes of those over 200 cases where IDT projects were enacted on, enabled. So where I think a key insight here is, companies, you can imagine, will undertake a project which is, they think, in their best interest, and there'll be clearly a best interest in signing off a project. But we can think about what was achieved in respect of things like labor costs, the reduction of those, reduction of material costs, improved delivery performance in terms of impact. And we can look at the three most common digital applications across each of those cost reduction categories. So process control and optimization is top of the pops in all cases there. And then you get into things like demand forecasting for reduction in labor costs and process quality management, and so on. So you can look at those, after the presentation today, and just, I think, a little bit more of a think about those. But is it the case that they might be kind of popular, but not as impactful as they could be? I think that's certainly the case. So you might say, well, better impact could be made in those cost reduction categories by kind of reordering the types of projects which are sanctioned in industrial digital technologies. So have a think about that as a way of, I guess, justifying your IDT projects and thinking about where value is most added. There's a summary there in terms of business value areas where most cases, so what was popular is the top bar, the top area, and what created most value would be the bottom bar, and the types of projects there. I wanted to turn that point to the point of industrial digital technologies is, how I put it, is so much more than automating the box being the factory. And yeah, so gains can be made in automating the box, but potentially the greatest impact, leverage, outcome of digital transformations would be around thinking about the business strategy, around the business model, and thinking about connecting all parts of a business and its inbound activities and outbound activities, its ecosystem, to use another jargon term. So I would encourage you to go and find that report if you wish, but think more than only automating the box, even though that might be a good first step. How can you reconfigure or reimagine what the business might be, what the business might look like? So I wanted to stop off at that point, and while you've been warming up from a cold start this morning, there was actually a little bit of frost on my windscreen up in the northwest today, is to hear your thoughts around that so far. What does it make you think of? And you can come off your mute and say who you are and your thought.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
This is Bama. I work for a company called Vertical Aerospace Group Limited. We are in Bristol. We are making a air taxi. At the moment, we are making a prototype, and I've been working as a sort of welding engineer. It's not an advanced welding and joining engineer, because we are mostly focusing on our battery, how to improve our battery, especially when you think about flying. It's about the safety of the aircraft. So we are focusing more on the safety procedure of the battery. So I'm basically involved in the process and product development. At the moment, I'm trying to understand the fundamental of like how you can change the design, how you can change the product and process development, and make a sort of a very valuable result, which can help us to make a proper material selection and a proper joining tech methodology for each of the things, whatever in the aircraft we're using it. Especially if we take a wings, we might need some sort of welding and joining at some part of it. So it's all about understanding the process and product development, which is really useful for us in further building of the aircraft.
Yes.
My question is, how do we, because we just started, we are just initiated this work, and we wanted to make them digitalization, because we have got an idea of making 1,000 flights in a year. For example, we are going to make that, we are going to manufacture that one. And in future, we wanted to manufacture, we wanted to make our own battery pack. Instead of going to the supplier side, we wanted to do it all in-house, and we wanted to expand the, sort of like the manufacturing thing in-house. So yeah, the reason I'm attending this one, in future, we wanted to make them digitalization. What are the steps we do need to look in, and how do we progress in this? Because we haven't started anything yet right now.
I've got some thoughts about next steps. So perhaps we could come back to your question, Bama, at the end.
Okay.
But in general terms, I would say it's a very important objective. It sounds like a very valuable objective. So it's a real imperative to your innovation. I'll call it an innovation, and covered it from an innovation management perspective, and work out your roadmap to that goal, and all of the projects and sub projects. And the value of a roadmap is it articulates a lot of things, but it articulates your incentive for investment in capabilities, in technologies, in the resources. So I'd point you back to develop a roadmap.
Okay. Thank you.
But there are some other steps that we could take later on in the presentation.
Okay.
So, thank you, Bama. Is there any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Rob, can I say something? It's John Harters from Synthesis. Yeah. We come from, our background is in military communications links. And so we're, in a sense, we're used to looking at systems of systems, integrated systems of systems, but very much with a human in the loop. So what we're looking towards is to actually trying to bring some of our experience into the industrial domain. So I'll say right at the start, we're a service provider, so we aren't really starting on our digitization journey. We're not on the digitization journey in that sense, but we're looking very much as to how we can bring our experience of that type of systems of systems into an industry 4.0 perspective. So I would welcome any opportunity I might have to possibly have a discussion downstream or work with you more closely to move that on forward. Yeah,
there's quite a good body of work, I would say, at IFM around services, servitization, and digitalization is obviously very well blended in there. So there's a going back to that picture of research and practice. We can certainly pull in some ideas around that, but that aside is bringing in it's industrial digital technologies is so much more than automating the box, isn't it? It's the whole service package behind that, and in front of that, and enabling the business. So very, very relevant area. And working that whole strategy out, that whole roadmap for services, delivery, services design through digital, enhanced by digital technologies is what you need to be doing, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and I would have thought one of the biggest threats is when you're connecting things together into a system of systems like we're talking about there. You've obviously got desirable emergent behavior, but the thing you clearly want to avoid is undesirable emergent behavior. And the more complex and bigger you get, the more likely that is to happen. Right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I think it's Richard again from Rhinebury. While we're on the subject of roadmaps and linking into what the gentleman's just mentioned now, I think cyber security is something that needs to be considered right at the very beginning of any roadmap. It shouldn't be a bolt-on at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. And how we would, I'd call cybersecurity as a technology or an enabler, probably. So in roadmap terms, that's the bottom layer of the roadmap. But I think your point, and I would reinforce that, is it's very strongly linked to the innovation and the value creation thing that you want to deliver, which is a middle layer of the roadmap. And a roadmap means that you don't have any technologies floating in space without anything or as an afterthought actually to a service or a product or a process that you want to be working on. So very, very important point, Richard, thank you. Okay, great. I'm going to close that bit down, but we'll come back to Q&A at the end. Maybe some other thoughts arise as well. So let's canter on and think about the barriers to adoption, which I think is important points as we're thinking strategically in our businesses about, forewarned is forearmed and all of that. So really understanding barriers in different forms, and they can be split into different aspects. You may have heard of the term, more jargon, absorptive capacity, which is the ability of a company to identify and then deliberately bring in knowledge that is relevant to the thing it's trying to achieve. So there can be barriers in different formats here, either to the generation of ideas for digital technology adoption, to the diffusion of knowledge into the business and within the business, and then barriers to deployment. It's the skills and the capabilities, for example, would be barriers to deployment. And in terms of the report, I looked at what the barriers to deployment were, and SMEs can get a hard ride sometimes, but we do know that one of the particular barriers for SMEs is that absorptive capacity. Limited resources, perhaps needing to focus on the knowledge that the business needs to take on board, and perhaps the scale of resources that is available for investments. But also things like legacy systems and so resistance to change. Think about industrial digital technologies and digitalization as a change process as well, which also touches into managerial and technical skills and leadership around those things. With respect to diffusion, they're coming in now, but the lack of digital norms, standards and certifications, again, across these 200 projects around the world. Awareness still, I would say, still at an early stage for a lot of companies. And the fact that many of you on the call today is that you recognize the need for absorptive capacity and becoming aware and finding out about this material. And then some mentions, Richard, around cybersecurity. There we are, and concerns around that and infrastructure gaps. But then barriers to generation is a general, it's a UK problem, underinvestment in R&D. And also within companies, compared to, why do we say that? Compared to international, what we might consider as peers, or would want to consider as peers, and things like weak connections between industry and academia. That's clearly not always the case, and you will have good connections between yourselves, perhaps, and academia, or academia and industries that you work with, and so on. So, but let's think about across those barriers a little bit more. There's going to be a lot on this slide, and I'm not going to talk through point by point, but and again, I would encourage you to go back after the presentation And so this is structured, barriers as an individual, so people and roles, barriers within the organization, the company itself, the business unit, the barriers in the market, and the ecosystem, and then seems like far away, but your policy and regulatory environment, and barriers with respect to generation, diffusion, and deployment. And having more awareness, let's put it this way, turn it around to having none to what we need to do. More awareness in the decision makers in companies, working on our change management, our not invented here, building our expertise, having project champions, working on change management and training. And then across the organization, make sure you've got roadmaps in place, have your business cases there, have lean and effective business systems to green light projects around IDT. In the markets, perhaps getting a little bit further away perhaps, but technology availability, needing more vendors and expertise within the market as providers, and quite interesting, I suppose, supply chain acceptance, as supply chains have come under, let's say they've had a shock these last couple of years, and they're undergoing a shock right now. And so perhaps there's a big imperative to do something about that right now. And then from a policy point of view, more funding, more incentives, more programs, and you see them, government trying to do something about those policy angles and breaking down silos between R&D initiatives and putting in more infrastructure. Argue, let's see what the jury says about how that's actually panning out. But summarize that by let's see. Yeah, so improve awareness of decision makers, improve technical expertise, put in roadmaps, understand technical challenges in detail, understand the market and things beyond the technology, including contractual arrangements, and work on your R&D initiatives, and how perhaps more for policy people, I'd say, how they're evaluating technologies. So I'm going to leave that report now, and you can go and find it and read it if you were interested in doing so. But also look back at the presentations, think through over a coffee implications, start a conversation with a colleague, maybe in the management team or as an academic colleague as well. So let's step into the individual boardrooms. Let's take that perspective and think about the digital transformation strategy. And it's around linking long-term business objectives to short-term actions, knowing what you have, what you need, and through the digital lens. It's a bit jargony, but what can individual firms do to take the first and best possible steps? I suppose it's really the acid test question that helps you make progress with fewer misfires in projects going wrong or selecting the wrong ones, that make efficient use of your precious resources, and that prioritizes value first. Now, what is a digital transformation strategy? Well, a way of looking at it is it's a multifaceted plan for touching many or all aspects of a business, looking at objectives such as operational efficiency or brand and innovation or customer satisfaction, knowledge retention, business value. So it's value driven, as a good strategy should be, but touching on the marketing, the operations, the customer service, the human resources, the finance, and the information technology. And it's about linking those long-term objectives to the short-term actions, ultimately, that give a clear roadmap or plan forward. So another way of saying that is it's not a functional strategy. It's not only about manufacturing or marketing, and I would say it shouldn't be seen as such or placed in the business in such a way, this is an operations strategy, therefore it sits with operations. No, it's a business-wide strategy which covers many aspects and spans the business. If there's nothing else that's silo busting, then there are a few things, let's say. And really, we're trying to think of factors inside and outside the box of the factory. So that's one way of thinking about it. We can think about how it touches different dimensions at the same time. And so, between what we can see externally in the business or internally, we want to look at the business model. We want to look at the customer experience and how that relates to the business model. We want to look at the operational model and how that relates to the business model. We want to look at the working environment. Very good reasons for undertaking IDT projects is safety of people, particularly in hazardous working environments. So bringing in more automation, robotics, cobotics. So widening our perspective on any of our digital transformation potential projects. Okay, so coming up to a kind of conclusion point, I guess, is understanding what kind of questions are we asking. So thinking back to the roadmap session, why, what, how, and also in when do we need to achieve things, is understanding why we're transforming in terms of the context. The content is what it is we are transforming, and the process for the transformation is how we're going to do it. So in terms of the first thing, the why, we want to think about what's going on in the business problems we're trying to solve. We want to understand what's driving our business objectives. We also want to need to understand what's going on in the external world, whether that be a market or regulatory environment. We then think about the content, the what. This is the middle layer of the roadmap, in effect. So we're thinking about the choices that we can make and types of projects that we would actually work on, the decision areas that we would enact, and then how would be, where do you start, the point of entry, who's involved in this, how are we going to manage the project, what procedures will we use to make these things happen, and they should all stitch together as would a good roadmap do for us. So it's another way of saying, digital transformation can be enabled by having a good roadmap, answering those why, what, and how questions. We want to then be able to summarize all that thinking, and we like things on a page, single page, in the work we do with companies. So we've got digital strategy blueprint on a page where we'd have summarized the overall strategy and vision and the digital transformation vision, what the external environment looks like with respect to customers, competitors, suppliers, and technologies. Thinking about how that good strategy is a fit between the business, its environment. When the business is out of step or out of fit with its environment, it's in trouble or feels pain of some sort. And so we want to state that. But then we want to, again, kind of middle layer stuff is how will we compete in the future? What are we going to transform? And then those aspects of the how, the procedure, the project management process, and the point of entry, which you can not go through each point. But it's about detailing those things out. And you can start quite quickly with, it's almost a canvas, isn't it, where, get together, for an hour, and chew the fat, take all this on board, create a digital strategy blueprint. Just take 1 hour, see what can happen, what could go wrong. And another way of looking about this, and then we can open up the mic again, is steps. Barmy, you're asking about steps to be taken, so hopefully I've given you some thoughts around steps to take, but think about this as a toolkit through your digital transformation journey, where we're first of all exploring the potential, then we understand the value, then we define where we're going to go, identify the pathway, and implement projects. It's just dead easy, isn't it? So if we put it that way. So things you could do to explore the potential: education, case studies, white papers, and reports. Using tools like value mapping or business ecosystem mapping that we use in our practice, and think about services along the way there. Services were mentioned, John. you know, good old things in innovation management like creativity and ideation, and industrial automation, resilience. You know, we can look at how resilient the business is with respect to automation, where its vulnerabilities might be. But then again, good strategy thinking, scenario planning and visioning. We've got an automation assessment tool, which is a rapid way to, you know, understand where you're at, where you want to go with respect to specifically automation. So we can point you to that. You know, get your plan together, think about your roadmap, and then, you know, it might be other things. You might say, you know, make or buy. This question about do we make technology, or do we buy it, or do we partner to develop it, and so on. So you know, just coming really to a final kind of summary and conclusion, is this concept of hype around IDT, Fourth Industrial Revolution, is certainly real as a hype phenomena. But so are the barriers and the opportunities. And with respect to opportunities, I'd like to encourage you to think well beyond process automation. You know, there's you know, ways to rethink our competitiveness, ways to think about other functional areas, ways to think about, you know, beyond the box in the supply chain, and also how the customer can embed in new ways, whether that be into your service or product that you offer. And yeah. So that's a big opportunity, I think. That the barriers are very much more than technological, guess what, you know, and then their managerial, their leadership, their human behavior, their change. So it's, you know, build, but I'd say things you can do deliberately is build your capacity to absorb opportunities, work on your absorptive capacity. It would be the watchword for the day. And then another really strong point here is to, you know, understand value and lead with it, because, you know, it's then, you know, the technologies, the skills that assemble are, you know, the investment cases for those things are answered by value in your blueprint. So okay, that's all I've really got to say. I just point you to a few things. There's further resources. If you go to these links, I guess, Pim, they'll get the links through the presentation. There's a thing called, on the IfM Engage website, you can browse and sign up for a thing called Insights, and there's some articles there, getting the most out of your digital strategy and so on. You can read about, if you're interested in the automation assessment tool, you can go read about that and how that works. But if you want or need more help, I'd be very happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. Please email me. I don't know who you are, so, you know, I'll wait for your call if you wanted to have one. But please reach out to me. We can start with just 30 minutes on the phone about what might be possible. Look at those other resources at IFM. Sign up for IFM Insights. So that's all in terms of presentational. Let's open up the mic and any questions or comments or thoughts, observations.
Excellent, thanks, Rob. Obviously, you know, if anybody has any questions or comments, please shout. I mean, fascinating stuff. I mean, one of the things that I always find quite interesting with this is that for a lot of businesses, especially for SMEs, this is the type of subject that very quickly ends up in the too difficult bracket. And you know, they're not really sure how to go about it. They've got lots of other things that they need to get on with. Yeah. And so it's almost a little bit ignored, or it's one of those things going like, oh yeah, I know I need to do something, but I'm too busy now type thing. Yeah. And it is actually possible to kind of adapt an almost baby step approach. It's not necessarily, you know, from 1 second to the next you need to, you know, completely change your entire business. It is kind of possible to take a baby step approach as well. And you know, if you can, Rob, if you have any comments around, you know, how do you start? How can you take those baby steps and maybe even identify the low-hanging fruits? Yeah. I know that you've touched upon a lot of stuff already, but I think for businesses it's really the case of like, you know, what could you do reasonably quickly, reasonably easily to get you on the road? Yeah,
I would always point back to value. It's all value driven, this question. You know, why should we do anything? And perhaps the reason for not accelerating on something that could be done is we don't understand the value. So, but if it was a big number that came out of that value conversation, wouldn't you do it? You know, but so there's that angle. There's also, you know, the idea of skunk works, that you know, it is you know, a small project to try a technology and see the result you get. Perfectly valid approach to innovation management, as we talked about before. But I suppose driven by those, you know, where can you release most value? Is it process efficiency? Is it product design and development? Is it your supply chain? Is it customer involvement? What is it? And you should know this as a business. What are the things you're working on? This is strategy of the business, and this is future value creation. So it's I hear you that it can seem difficult and involved, but you know, it doesn't take much to get on the front foot, I think, to understand options and then try something if you want to do it. Yeah, exactly. I've spoken to many people about this before, and we have a number of members that specialize in this sort of stuff as well. And it's yeah, you know, maybe even sort of you know, getting a clear vision of where you feel improvements could be made, but be that in process, be that in design, be that whatever, and then thinking about it slightly differently, because it's kind of like, okay, you know, what would we normally do? But actually, what could we do if we bring in some digitalization, if we bring in some automation, if we bring in some tech to help us further? Because there's quite a few, you know, wouldn't it be good if we could do X, Y, Z? Well, actually, you can, because if you apply a digital solution to that, quite often you can. I know of one particular member that have actually, you know, revolutionized something that traditionally is very manual. Yeah. Then they've developed this app so that people on the shop floor can effectively use your phone, scan something in, you know, feedback information directly. So rather than running around up and down the factory trying to find something, they can now alert somebody straight away type thing. And it's those sort of things where, you know, if you have a good look at where it's likely you can find some gains, you know, being in time saved or whatever it might be, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, either bring somebody in, you know, have a conversation with yourself, but tackle that particular problem, see what you could do there. Yeah. And then from that, and if you build that up into success, like you said, with a bit of a sconce work or like a prototype production line, if you will, or whatever, to then kind of go, okay, well, that worked. Let's look at other steps. You know, where else can we use this technology? And it's quite good to see that, because I know that for a lot of companies, it's kind of like, Jesus Christ, where do we even start? Yeah, I was just thinking there, Pim, about a company I worked with a couple of years ago, and it wasn't on digitalization, but it was on the project portfolio for the new technologies and the new products of the future. And what they did was, I was just speaking with them the other day at an event, and the technical director said, we actually reduced, we had 30 projects in, they were the SME, you know, so they had 30 projects, R&D and technical and so on. What we did is we looked at those properly with some criteria, we reduced it to 10, and that's reduced, I mean, that's just freed up all the right resources to work on those 10 and do it well. And they understand the value of each of those 10 projects. And it's in a similar thing, really, that is, do it like, you could do it like that. What projects are we working on? Innovative projects are we working on? Put them through a process to think about the value of those projects. You know, opportunity and feasibility, if some of you are on the call from previously, and map that out. And that way you get a really resonant understanding of where value is and what, you know, why you're doing this. And that's I think that's a really important point. So a little bit of process, managerial process in innovation management can be helpful. Yes, excellent. Right, I'll stop your sharing. I'm mindful of time, that we only have a few moments left. So was there anybody else who wanted to make any comments or have any questions? I'm always quite keen that, you know, while we have the expert in the room, let's make sure that we ask all the questions that we can, right? So if you want to, I can stay on for a little while longer as well. Excellent. John, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to say thanks. Interesting meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Excellent. Very good. Excellent. Mike.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, and very thought-provoking. Do you not find, though, that the majority of business, particularly SMEs, actually have a great difficulty in standing back from their business to take this total view and strategy and where the value actually is? Because, you know, the very nature is they're embedded in the business. And, you know, they haven't got that resource, have they, to be able to say, right, let's now come back from the day-to-day. Let's come back from monthly management meetings. Let's really think about where that business is going in the future.
Well, we work with a lot of SMEs in programs like Sharing in Growth, which is actually aerospace related, supply chain related, and not particularly about digitalization at all, but strategy. And we've found that SMEs that we work with there are really very capable of thinking strategically and putting in, you know, some processes. And they don't need to be heavy processes at all. But I totally get your point, Mike, around it's hard sometimes to working was it on the business rather than in the business, to step back and all that. And but could we carve a day out to think about some of this stuff from time to time or every quarter? And put in some light touch process that help us select the projects that are right for us, and you know, bring some objectivity to it, build some efficiency into our business processes. Yes, we could.
Do you find that decarbonisation, or all the hype about decarbonisation, has really been refocusing people's mind in terms of this whole question of digitalisation and smart?
Yeah,
smart of course is bring it forward in terms of decarbonisation, etc.
It's a great point, and IFM has another centre for industrial sustainability, and the new actually sort of a little bit off topic, but you know, since you mentioned it, the Sustainability Association has just been launched, and it's for companies to kind of work on sustainability thinking. But as Professor Steve Evans in the Centre for Industrial Sustainability talks about, you can go and find his YouTube videos, which are very inspiring. Talks about the convergence of digital technologies for sustainability and enabling that, and decarbonisation. So yeah, that's going to be, you know, forgive the pun, a hot topic. And you know, digitalisation is an enabler of that. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just come in on that, because we have a special interest group on design, simulation and metrology, and their next event, which is going to be on December the 7th, I believe, is specifically focused on the role of digital technologies and digital twinning and simulation and modeling in achieving sustainability, both for companies as well as products and stuff. So that may well be something to look at. And similarly, we also have a special interest group on digital and advanced manufacturing. And again, they hold events, and a previous event we did around sort of factories of the future, and that obviously got into a lot of digital technologies as well and things. So I would say do be on the lookout. I know it's a little bit of a plug, but do be on the lookout for some of the events that some of our special interest groups are putting on, because they will touch upon a lot of these topics. And just to come back on your earlier point, it's kind of the old adage of working in your business versus working on your business. And you know, as the company leader, you know, you have to make time to work on your business rather than just in it, if you wanted to grow and succeed. And there are ways of doing that. You know, business coaches is potentially a good way of doing that, because it kind of forces you, because you know the meeting is coming up, so you're like, oh crap, I haven't done anything, so you go and do it. But also, I mean, again, you know, we as the SDC, we with our partner Be the Business, we offer the Mentoring for Growth program, which gives one-on-one sort of support of specialist advisors to help your company grow. We also offer SME advisory boards, where you get a board of 5 experienced business leaders to bring your problems to, and or your challenges or your ideas, for them to help them. So there are quite a few tools available, and there's quite a few programs out there that can help you do that. And yeah, if you want to take your business to the next level, then make time for it. You know, it's really the thing to do. But at the same time, there are lots of people that can help with that as well. So, you know, try to put that in place, I would say. I'm conscious of time. Was there anything else from anybody, or shall we leave it there?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's refreshing to hear people talking about actual people and the importance of the value and realizing the maximum value of people. As you know, that's the main barrier. Also, if you realize the maximum value of your people, then that enables you to work on your business rather than in your business. So thank you very much. Very refreshing presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Right, I think we'll leave it there for the interest of time, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I just wanted to point out another thing as well. So obviously we've got the Digital and Advanced Manufacturing Special Interest Group. Have a look on our website on some of the work that I've done before. Videos are available on YouTube, but also sort of upcoming events. There's also the Design, Simulation and Metrology Special Interest Group. As I mentioned, again, we've got events coming up, and you can also look back at some of the stuff that's done. Also of interest to this group, I feel, is that we've recently announced that we partnered up with Amazon Web Services to offer a digital innovation program. So on November the 18th, we have a workshop with them to sort of learn more about it. And we're offering the opportunity to 15 companies to work together with Amazon and using that backwards sprint methodology to bring your ideas to market and stuff. And a lot of that centers around the digitalization as well. So do check that out if that's of interest. And obviously I manage the B2 business stuff that we're doing together with them as well. Please have a look. All of that is free of charge, by the way. So you know, that for me means it's packed at the right price, because I'm a very stingy Dutch person. But do have a look at all of that. And of course, if you have any questions about this sort of stuff, then please do get in touch with us. We're more than happy to help. But with that, I kind of wanted to leave it there. So Rob, thank you very much for your presentation. Really,
thank you, Pim. Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Before you go, if I may please ask you to fill in this little feedback poll. It should take less than a minute. It gives us an idea of what you made of this particular event, but also it gives us some steer on what you would like to see in the future. So please do take a moment to fill that in if you can. That would be great. And while everybody's doing that, I just want to say to the viewers on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. Hope you found it of value. As I said before, have a look at some of the other videos. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. Please also visit us on the website. And obviously, as the STC, we're here to help. So please do get in touch if we can help in any way. And obviously, as some of the YouTubers keep saying, please like, share, and subscribe. Because that's apparently good, something to do with algorithms. So please do that. And we'll hope to see you at the next one.
Pim, if you want to relaunch your poll, I inadvertently clicked stop poll. I'm a co-host, which I didn't realize, but okay, I didn't realize I had the power of the pen, and so I'm sorry for that.
I'll see what I can do. So thanks to people for watching. See you soon.